us about the item number. Was it a dream come true? How important was it that you broke down that process for us, the viewer?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the motivation to make this program in the first place is because I have secret, and I'm now old enough to be able to say this out loud, always harboured a desire to do that. To dance. Who hasn't, right? You grow up watching these films and, you know, like everybody, Helen and Hema and Madhuri and all these amazing actresses, when they do those song and dance numbers, that's what kind of sticks with you forever. So it really was, and it was off the back of Strictly. It was after doing Strictly, I thought, it's time to go and make something about Bollywood. It's time for me to break Bollywood. And that actually was put together by Chris. I mean, the brains of the operation is Chris and Kruti, the choreographer, and the two of you together. And it was our guy Glenn who shot it.
Yep.
And so actually, Chris is the one who can. It's so difficult, and you really did stitch me up a little bit.
We did stitch you up a little bit.
Yeah.
It was kind of early on, like Anita is such just a wonderful little bundle of energy on a shoot that it's like, let's find an excuse to get her on a roof in a sari with backing dancers, and there's no way that's not going to be fun.
But you know what was interesting? That could have been just a very sort of schmaltzy, schlocky way of looking at Bollywood, but
She did a good job though, right?
Not only a good job, but breaking down the whole fact that there are mudras and so almost everything in both the episodes, I've been privileged enough to see both, are the look you sort of expect and then the exploration.
Oh, that was really important because I think, especially for BBC Two, and if you're going to make a two-part, I think it'd be too simplistic to just make a programme that goes, here's Bollywood, and also just to presume that the audience know anything about it. But if you are going to tell them, particularly for our audience, really explain what this is about, because I mean, that's something I've understood. You can't just go, this is an item number and it's all about entertainment, because it's ancient and the culture and the all the hand gestures, all of that is so important to kind of explain to the audience why these Bollywood films are the way they are and the song and dance numbers are the way
and
they
the
are.
importance to a British Asian community. So for you growing up, you did, as you expressed, you grew up with these actors and actresses and with these movies. And Raj and Pablo, you talk to an audience of I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, probably much more than that, actually, on a weekly basis. But how important is Bollywood to them? So their show is called Love Bollywood on the BBC Asian Network.
Do you know, Bollywood is like, it's the essence of being Asian. Wherever you go in the world, in the UK, you might not know that person, you might not know anything about, they might be like Marathi or Telugu, whatever. But if you mention a Bollywood star or a Bollywood moment or a Bollywood film, there's a connection.
But not just even in the UK anymore. I mean, we have people texting us from Poland, from Moscow,
Peru, from it's so bizarre.
Places around the world. So, I mean, I think you mentioned this in what we saw. It's not just about escapism anymore. It is about enjoying the movie because of the singing, because of the dancing, and because now people are appreciating the amount of hard work which you've just shown that goes into making these movies.
But if you think of India's like the largest democracy, it's becoming a world power, and it's got a movie industry. This happened with Hollywood in the 30s, as America became a superpower. You had the golden age of Hollywood, the Busby Berkeley musicals, and that's what Bollywood is doing now.
Yeah.
So for the new generation of British Asians here, or people who appreciate Bollywood anywhere, do you think this is a connection with home?
So this is what is really interesting, where people, and you're right, and it's not just about people across India. This is Asian subcontinent. You know, you talk about the connection. It really is about being Asian. Whether you're from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, or indeed across the world, everyone can sing their favourite Bollywood songs. But there is now a generation of, particularly here in Britain, British Asians, who have no connection to India. Some of them have never set foot in India, and their access point is often Bollywood. They might speak the language at home, they might eat the food, but they'll watch these Bollywood movies. So actually, this documentary has been made to kind of explain to not just an audience that have no idea what Bollywood movies are, but also to a British Asian audience who take them at face value, and to make them see what modern India is all about, that is around, which is actually bears little resemblance to what the movies are showing them.
Absolutely, I was going to agree with you. I think it's gone it's grassroots levels here. So that generation, I mean, you know, who didn't kind of watch Bollywood movies on TV when they first started, etc., etc. when they watch this documentary, they're going to understand not only a connection with, say, India, but with the film industry in terms of how it provides jobs for individuals, how important it is for the economy.
Yeah.
I think what you've done has extended further.
But how important was the Spotboy, Chris?
Spotboys are brilliant.
It's just an extraordinary phenomenon of a Spotboy. The moment a Spotboy is like a runner, I guess, that we would have here, who provide chai. And this was because I've obviously come at this from a different place from everyone else, so I knew nothing about Bollywood beyond a few movies I'd seen on international flights, and I was coming at it with fresh eyes. And I think we kind of worked well together because you obviously had this huge kind of background and knowledge. I didn't. So I'm constantly saying to Anita, this is extraordinary. And you're like, what's a Spotboy? It's not a big deal. Every time they broke, 12 Spotboys would pop out of nowhere.
And of course,
it's just try everywhere you move. You can't.
And the star has his own Spotboy. What was
He's
the
got a
most
special umbrella guy. Did you see that?
for your shade, not literally throwing shade in the way we look at it. what was the most surprising thing to you coming to a whole new culture of filmmaking and to look at it from the point of view, if you're taking this out to a BBC Two audience and hopefully beyond, so what was it important for you to capture?
What was really interesting for me, when I went out on the recce, there was a moment where I kind of got Bollywood for the first time. When we were in the cinema, we were recceing that opening scene with Anita in the cinema, 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And up until that point, I just known it. It's singing, dancing, it's bright, it's sort of over the top.
Yeah.
And you realise that actually these films sort of exist in a context. And you sit there in this room, 1,000 people going bananas, screaming, dancing in their seats, all this, and it just sort of makes more sense because it's consumed in a way that I think our films aren't in our cinemas here. And I was literally standing there with goosebumps because we had sort of been snuck in the front. We had 1,000 people screaming at us. And that was a moment that it was like, it's more than just these big, bright films that you think you know. It's everything that goes behind it, and it's how society consumes it and how important it is. It's more than just Hollywood and a big economic machine.
Yeah.
As you say, it reflects society. It challenges more and more. It challenges society. Episode 2, we get into way beyond the masala films, the singing, dancing around a bush, but films that look at, drug abuse and the role of women and
Sanitary pads.
Toilets.
Toilets.
Yeah.
All those things. So, Anita, when you conceived the series and I was really so delighted that in your first piece of voiceover, you absolutely clarify India makes maybe 1,000 films of the but only 300 are Bollywood, but the whole of India is film mad. Every point of this is accurate. But what did you know that you had a journey from one episode that was going to be masala and behind the scenes, and the next would go a little bit more, I think certainly more journalistic in some ways?
I think in my head, no, because the kind of the format and the structure is definitely like Chris is the mastermind.
Right.
But in my head, when I went to the BBC and said, listen, I want to make a programme about Bollywood, I was, and absolutely, for me, this was about explaining to an audience what this film industry is all about, but also why it's so important to talk about it right now, and absolutely to change what I've always witnessed, especially in the last few years I've been going to India, this rapidly changing society and a young generation who are globalized, outward-looking, who live lives where, and they're telling their story, and there's this big kind of like very liberal film industry, if you like, and a deeply conservative Indian society, and the tug of war, which we experienced when we were there. I mean, this is the other thing you've got to remember. Like, you watch this, and it's all put together brilliantly by Chris. How hard it was just to get access to all those sets.
Absolutely.
Welcome to our world.
Yes, exactly. I mean, really miraculous access on so many levels. So, give us
That's Sarah, the producer. Sarah
Sarah
was on the phone for
Sarah.
2 months trying to.
She went native. She was there for 2 months. Well
cracked.
I mean, yes, we've been on.
Well, we've been to Mumbai together.
And I was married to a Bollywood star. I know a little bit about this, to say the least. To get onto those sets is extraordinary, but also to be telling a story at such a time of change must have been even more fascinating. So, tell me about some of the challenges then of actually filming. The challenges of getting the people, thanks to Sarah and everybody else on the ground there. But what were some of the challenges, Chris?
Well, the schedules. I mean, it's mind-boggling that they happen. You saw that set of 500 people We got a phone call 2 days before we filmed that. That wasn't meant to be filmed for another 2 weeks. And I just get a phone call from the exec of the film going, yeah, the director's decided to do that on Thursday. Do you want to come? And so our London production office was constantly like sort of cancelling flights, rebooking flights. And we arrived there and they'd wrangled 500 extras, like that dude who was just quietly having a coffee that afternoon and suddenly dragooned into being a Bollywood film.
Yeah.
And we saw that everywhere. It's just these things that you think, this isn't going to work. They're not going to do it this time. They're going to muck it up this time. And somehow, bang, it all comes together.
Yeah.
And the longer we spent there, we started going a bit that way ourselves. We became a bit of a Bollywood production.
Yeah, of course we were.
Fine, Anita, we'll work it out. Yeah.
We'll just rock up. And we were like, sitting in traffic going, it's all right, we've got time, we'll get there.
It's infectious, isn't it?
Well, it's the only way to make it work. But then, as well as all the magic that happens, we had to deal with the other side of it, which is we incredibly got onto the set of Padmavati, as it was then, which is the most controversial film that happened last year, and it was all unfolding whilst we were there. And we did, you'll see in the second part, there's lots of stuff as I was on set, but we were meant to get access to the stars, and they said, come and sit around. So we had, was it 7 hours we did, Sarah? 7 hours sitting around waiting. And the deference towards these stars, it's another world.
Oh,
it
like-
really, well, we saw the director come out, didn't we, Sanjay Leela Bhansali, for a cigarette. Nobody made eye contact. And we were all kind of going, literally no one made eye contact with the guy. No one would even want to until Sir was ready to talk.
Tell me about, so the word is jugad.
Yes.
So I don't know how many people who speak Hindi understand that word, but would you like to just explain that and explain?
Can anyone explain it?
Well,
I guess it's...
you did a beautiful job in the second episode of being on the sets and seeing somebody put something together and explaining to you.
I think everyone, I've been told there's lots of different interpretations, but my interpretation is that it's when things just come together.
Or
don't
you
know-
improvise.
Yes. It's people often say in India, you don't know how things happen, but they just do. So if you want something like, oh, we'd love a white horse or a pink elephant tomorrow, you just word goes out, and somehow by tomorrow,
happen.
Yeah.
Isn't it usually chalo chalo karo karo?
Exactly. And it's just the Indian way, and that kind of filters from in every aspect of society, not just in the film industry. Things can just, I think it's because they've just got so many people, and everyone knows everyone.
So, Raj and Pablo, watching that, you've been in Bombay an awful lot. You talked to these movie stars. Tell me what the most surprising thing that came out of that first part for you two was.
Apart from her item number?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll teach you later.
No, for me, you captured the essence of it, the essence of the industry. It's that chaotic karma that happens, but everything comes together.
But also, I have to say, you know what? You know how long we've been working with the BBC Asian Network. It took me back to when we first started. Yeah. You know, the waiting around, what you were saying now, going on set, meeting all these people, going, okay, is this what you really do? Because initially, it can be a bit of a culture shock. You can go, okay, you seriously just stand here for that long?
Yeah.
Whether you're a Spotboy, whether, it's somebody holding a fan.
And a star just arrives, and they do it, and they're gone. But the stars do realise that it's taken a whole day or 2 days of getting this together, and everyone's just waiting for that one.
And even one shot can take
Yeah.
you've experienced it. It can take forever.
We particularly loved meeting the Foley artists, guys. For
I
me,
love
was,
that bit so
Yeah,
much.
they were amazing, weren't they?
And also to think it's that room. Anyway, so we mentioned and you saw some of the extras who were dragged in from coffee shops and God knows where in Jodhpur and wherever they were. But in episode 2 of the series, there is a whole lot of... There's more dancing from you, I think, isn't there? Is there more dancing? Fighting.
Any opportunity to dance, Nikki, I'm
But
dancing.
then you are on the sets for a slightly different type of dancing, not traditionally Bollywood, but Anita gets to meet some of these dancers. So Brits as extras in British Raj costumes for a period piece, and then a whole different type of, not extra, but very much a contributor. Tell us about visiting that set and talking to those artists.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of, again, want to show what modern India is all about. So as well as having these classic boy meets girl, very Indian sets and films, they also have these modern films that are for a younger generation, an urban audience, if you like. And so it was like last minute, wasn't it?
It was last minute, and the funny thing is it's so hard to get access. Once you've got access,
You're in.
especially because Sarah was so charming, once you're in, you're in. And then so we're chatting to Bosco, who's an incredibly famous choreographer.
cool.
Yeah.
I said to Bosco, there's no chance we could chuck Anita in this dance. He's like, yeah, of course.
It's like, sure.
And so, did you bring your hot pants?
Yeah.
Yes, she did. 'cause
She was
Well,
in them.
it's funny because they said to me, "Oh, it's a house party scene, and they might put you in it." And I just instantly knew it's going to involve hot pants because, like every Bollywood house party scene, they're all in hot pants.
Anita was like,
these
I've got
days.
them in my bag.
Funnily enough, I've come prepared. And so they chucked me in it. And yeah, to have that many, I was surprised. That was surprising for me. I knew they've always had Western dancers come, and there's a big connection, especially Russian women would dance a lot.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
to see that many, and they're not just girls who are there chancing it, they're professionally trained dancers who are earning a living and having a
It's
career.
people
out there.
that have been trained from here
Yeah.
that now are going to Bombay.
That's
I have to say, but
Wages are really good.
it kind of started with Upam Patel because
Right,
when
the male
model who went
who's a
out
male model who set up an agency and then was in a couple of movies, and everyone from Leicester, I think, and everyone was saying, you know, he's not going to make it. And yes, he hasn't made it that big, but he's done a movie with Ranbir Kapoor, Katrina Kaif, and I think we forget how difficult it was during that time for anybody
But
who
it's
wasn't.
still difficult. This is the point. I think there's a lot. Yeah.
Tell me about these. So traditionally, a white woman in a Bollywood movie played 6 roles: the rape victim, no matter how you fitted into the plot; CIA agent, gangster's mall, foreign returned BV's girlfriend who messes up. All negative. All negative.
Are these all the roles you've had, Nick?
Yes, they are. I have played them all. But so I look now at some of these scenes with the girls dancing, and I was like, is it only the white women who are shaking the boot? How does that all work? And what's the hierarchy on a set when it comes to those dances?
Well, we watched it happen, didn't we?
We did. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the striking thing for me going in there was how sexually charged it was. Like, it was like it was like a hip hop video. And it was hot pants and predominantly Western girls in hot pants, but both. And I mean, the really wonderfully incongruous thing, those 2 Essex girls, later in that clip, we found them backstage learning their Hindi lines
Yeah.
because they were the main stars of the actual thing, and so they're frantically trying to learn this Hindi. But it was surprisingly sexual for me anyway.
Well, but I was saying because we spent a long time making this and talking about it. I mean, I don't think that's anything new in
No.
Indian films. I think particularly the song and dance sequences, they've taken whatever kind of Western thing is happening and incorporated it, whether it's kind of 70s disco
Yeah.
or 80s music. I mean, in the 80s, they were famous for just ripping off Western songs
Yeah.
and just putting the riffs
Inspired by.
in.
Inspired, yeah.
And the dancing has kind of taken on different like dance forms from the West. So now, twerking, why not?
Bollywood is like a Hoover. It just sucks any culture, any dance, anything that's happening, reinvents it, and suddenly it's Bollywood.
Good description. Good
Yes.
description.
A
So
Hoover.
have we seen then over this decade a change, or is it exactly the same pattern that's happening? Borrowing from the West, but an incorporation into the traditional Bollywood sort of formulaic film?
No, I mean, hopefully in episode 2 you'll see. There's a huge change now, and absolutely it's a reflection of where India is right now. As
I think, I agree with you. I think economically, I mean, I hate to say this, but when Brexit comes in, all that kind of stuff, there are big things that are going to happen with India, and in terms of its economy. And I think that's going to, if you think about Bollywood, it's the biggest thing that brings money into India.
Well, I mean, it's a huge part of their economy, but also the fact that you have these big metropolitan cities now with a generation who have grown up because of the internet and because the economy opened up in the 90s, consuming the stuff that we all grew up watching, right? So they want to tell their own stories. So you've got these great new young directors and actresses, not just actors, and we met them, right?
Well, there's an
We came.
extraordinary stat that I think it's 1.6 billion people and 50% are under 25.
Yeah,
Which,
wow.
if you think about that, means that all of those old notions of old Bollywood and the singing and dancing in saris are starting to die. And I think the clip you're coming on to play is a good sort of example of this new generation of like, I'm done with what mum and dad watched. We want to tell real stories, and we want a bit more gritty, and we want something a bit fresher. Is the impression I got.
So Anita got to go onto the set of a shoot that AIB were doing. So they are a comedy sketch collective. AIB means All India Bakchod. I won't translate that for you.
Don't.
They have had hundreds of millions of hits on their viral videos.
Like the Saturday Night Live of India. if you
Yeah.
like, yeah.
So I don't suppose I need to say a lot more, but this is them preparing a film that's cocking a snook at a Bollywood heroine. Have a look, and Anita can tell you more afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
That delights me more than anything, because I think I am not alone when I say I grew up watching these films, but when you grow up in the West and you watch these films and you watch them alongside all the other films that you watch that come from Hollywood, you can't help but sitting there and going, Mum, come on, really? She's got nothing to say for herself. I certainly did. Yeah. So it is wonderful now that we've got a generation who are doing that. And, the same conversations are taking place in Hollywood, and it's happening in Bollywood as well.
So somebody like Kangana, the
Yes.
actress that we saw.
Who's huge.
Yeah.
And controversial.
But would you have one of the bigger heroines like Aishwarya or Deepika?
No.
Right.
No,
It wouldn't happen.
So, but is a change of foot?
But I think it's because she is already very outspoken. She's known, and she just doesn't
She's a
care.
maverick. She is a maverick.
And she's doing great at
If you look at her wealth of work, you kind of know, really, she does not have to explain herself anymore. She struggled really badly when she first started. Everyone wrote her off. And then Queen came along, and she had a massive hit. And then after that, she was quite vocal about
Standing
a
up
lot
for
of the
herself
men
and
that...
being a woman,
Yeah.
and the men that had abused her within the industry, and she was the first.
So is there, in the same way that we are seeing a Me Too movement in Hollywood, in the Indian film industries, is it happening? Did
Not
you
really.
get a sense
Well,
of it?
I didn't get a sense of it at all, actually. I got a sense. It's what I feel we've known about India
yeah.
for a long time. I'm kind of. And Nikki, you've probably had your experiences. I've had my, things. And what you did, there's an amazing, incredible. It was a jaw drop moment for me when we met the two girls, who one was from Australia, one's from Britain, and they are trying to make it as actresses out there, not getting very far, unfortunately. And they said, and I'm sort of chatting about them, and they went. We asked them about the casting couch, and they said, "Oh, before we even get to see the director, the producer will phone us and say, are you willing to compromise?" And
That's
I
the
just.
word. That is
Yeah.
Code word, almost,
code,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and they just said it to me as if like, well, everyone knows that's the, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got like post-Weinstein movement, Me Too movement happening in Hollywood, and yet India. So I would hope that it's going to happen, but I think it's a much harder.
But you know what I think's making a difference is with people like Priyanka Chopra putting her foot down and making a bigger name for herself. Outside. It's kind of not engendering fear, but saying, you can't treat me like this.
But you need the Deepikas, you need the big actresses to kind of go with. That's what you need for the movement to happen.
So
Where
do you see Bollywood in 15 years? If you go back and do this, actually, let's just say 10
winning an
years.
Oscar, come
Yes.
on. Not that they need it, not that they need validation from the West at all.
But do you see the women, do you see a
Yes.
big star, a female star being able to do what Kangana is doing now?
I think the way it will change is the big stars, the actresses, and the way they will find their voice is that they will have more choice about the roles that they play and the films that they do. I think for a long time, Bollywood and the directors, the writers, everyone, it's all been kind of certain sorts of man who have done it. And it's been, now you've got young women writing scripts. Yeah, real young directors who've been to film school. You've got Anurag Kashyap's of the world. You've got these great,
Things are changing.
who want to, and rounded storylines with female characters at the heart of it.
Behind the scenes too, it
Yeah.
felt like an exciting time to be there. We met the makeup artist.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good, isn't it, that bit?
Yeah, so it was illegal for women to apply makeup until 2014, which is staggering. And we met one of the women who sort of joined a lawsuit and took it to the Supreme Court and got it overturned. But that was, that's only 3 years ago. So it feels like it's in the middle of a big change.
Completely, and you've only got to look at. Sorry to interrupt, because at Sacred Games, which has just come out on
Yes,
Netflix,
yeah.
and Lust Stories again, which is out on Netflix. Zoya Akhtar, who's directed them. There's some great women behind the scenes, and the fact that now the West and Netflix in particular are trying to crack this Indian market.
Yeah.
I think that is going to change it beyond recognition.
I think it's only fair to say actresses like Sridevi, Vidya Balan, who've carried films just on their own shoulders without that whole we need a
It's all
hero
about the box
involved.
Yeah.
I think that's where it's going to head. Kangana's now the younger generation who's setting the trend, and I think it's going to be empowerment for women,
But
rightly
you talk
so.
about Hollywood, but
Yes.
don't forget, like, Bollywood is now buying into Hollywood. Like, Reliance are buying all the Hollywood studios. So there
Reliance
will be
are a big Indian
big
company.
Indian company. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a big sea change in the sense of production as well.
So in the same way that Hollywood studios make a China version for everything, you think that the Indian market will be big enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you just-
I was just going to think, because I was just thinking, because it's always been Indian cinema doing remakes of Hollywood movies
Yeah.
or like classics. I said like Bollywood is very Shakespeare because the stories, the family sagas, all that. But
Yeah.
they've done Romeo and Juliet, Kiamat Se Kiamat, that great version. Omkara, which was Othello, which
Yes.
is phenomenal. And Hollywood often take kind of great bits further east. Like The Departed was a remake of Internal Affairs.
Yeah,
Thank
yes.
you. Look at my husband because he's like Mr. Action. But wouldn't it be incredible if Hollywood did a remake of a Bollywood movie? Now that's what I'd quite like to see.
Bollywood movies remain formulaic, however,
Yeah, they
and that's
do.
what a family relies on. And the idea is that you can take granny and granddaughter and nobody will be offended.
I hope that changes.
There we go.
Come on.
There we go.
We did it quite well. The makeup artist was brilliant, wasn't she? So, like we said, there's no women were able to work as makeup artists in the India. It's like unfathomable for us to really kind of get our heads around, but they weren't. So there was a big campaign, a big push. They took it to the High Courts and they challenged it and they won. So we talked to a remarkable young makeup artist about that. And I guess when we speak to the young women, the sad thing is, I didn't get a sense that there is a big movement happening. We know that there have been horrendous rape cases that have made, international media and big news stories, and we all know people who are doing great work out there. But I didn't get a sense that there is a big movement yet. I'm still waiting for there to be some kind of cohesive Me Too movement that goes to India. The only positive that I find, and that is happening all over the world, that I saw, is that you have more young women working in the industry who are empowered within themselves, who are challenging stereotypes, who are not kind of putting up with the bullshit of the men. Sorry, it's okay, it's not on. It's not on the BBC.
It's not on air.
It's not on the BBC. And they're just bypassing old school Bollywood completely. They don't even need to go there. They're making their own films, telling their own stories, and you've got great films that are really challenging convention with women at the heart of it.
Yeah.
That is how I feel that they are being empowered.
Yeah, and you already saw in the first episode how many women were behind the scenes of some of these films.
It was maybe the director Krish. We actually interviewed Kangana on set in Ep 2, and we were with the director Krish, who was 500 people, and he was just such this island of calm. And so I was constantly walking near him because we had desperately trying to get an interview with Kangana, and it was maybe 2:30 in the morning, in the middle of this big fight scene, 500 people, horses, fire, cannons, the works. And I sort of said, Krish, if you get a chance, it'd be great if we could get Kangana. And he goes, yeah, now's good. Cut. Literally 500 people sat down. We wander up there with our little cameras and sit down like this. Your mate over here really settles into an interview that I thought we are here all
was
night.
so lovely.
About 20 minutes into the interview, I feel 500 eyes on the back of my head going, you understand we're making a film. So finally sort of do the wrap-up sign to Anita, and we finally stopped. And it was a fantastic interview with Kangana. But it was amazing that in the midst of all this, there's just so much calm that if you can imagine being at the helm of 500 people, I'd be beside myself.
And the power of Krish.
The power of
and
Krish.
it was what, 2 in the morning when that happened? And not just did we get the interview, 2 chairs arrived out of nowhere.
Spot boys.
Listen, I had waited a long time to interview Kangana. I was not. 500 guys waiting for me. I did not care. I was
Settling right into
You
that.
know what?
Getting my
If you have to
interview.
flip it over, because I know that Raj and I have been through this a lot of times. What was the worst? Where were you pulling your hair out going,
7
I
hours
can't.
on,
That's
on
the
the sets
brilli-
of Padmava.
Yeah, that's the brilliant thing about telly. You'll never see.
Yeah.
There's the bit. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of waiting around,
Yeah, it's
but it doesn't matter because that is absolutely part of the experience.
Yeah.
It's part of the team building between us and the team,
Yeah.
and that's where you drink the sweetest chai. Just make, and that's all part of the experience as well. What was the most surprising bit? Oh God, the Foley artists were amazing. I mean, dancing on the rooftop was absolutely, I think, one of the highlights of not just this, but I think a personal kind of career highlight. Watching Chris and Glenn, the camera, and all of a sudden we've got a track and we're making a movie on a rooftop. I can't wait for all the Asians in Britain to see the vagina thing, because everyone will be reaching for the remote control. So we've all been there. Well, I do say that, you know, the most risque thing that used to happen was a wet sari, which, by the way, we laughed that there was no kissing. But those wet saris and the dancing was so
much more
suggestive,
sexual.
like overtly sexual.
Yeah.
So there's all that. It's funny because there is a film called Delhi Belly, right, which is this great Judd Apatow-esque. You can watch it on Netflix. It's a slacker movie, and it's set in Delhi. It's made by a young filmmaker, and I was like, right, mum dance, let's watch Delhi Belly. And I'd watched it about 2 years ago, and I'd forgotten how much swearing and just how much sex is in this movie. Don't watch that film with your parents. Thankfully, you got away with it just about. But
I think the recent one was Viriki Wedding.
I've not seen that
Well,
yet.
there's
they
a
were-
masturbation scene in
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can watch both these episodes with all your family without worrying.